views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail. Hey, everybody. It is so great. It's so great. I get to have my friend and colleague, Dr. Friedemann, join us here today. The Empowered Self Series. This is amazing. Now, I have to tell you how timely, Benny, this topic is. Now, wait a minute. Am I going to offend any listeners here? But Dr. Friedemann may know what I'm talking about. Today's show topic is, does your inner child run your life? I think we should ask Cam Chancellor about that. Hey. I actually pinged him. And, I don't know if he actually replied or not. And
He's got a little bit bigger.
I'm not taking any credit for him going back to joining the Seahawks. But I pinged him because there was this whole thing about God going on. I'm going to turn it over to God. And so I just pinged him with the little saying that somebody said to me years ago, and it was something like, I think I pinged him, faith without works is dead. Please get back to work. And, I'm not saying that that's it, but I think does your inner child run your life is a good topic. Now, I don't know if Dr. Friedemann decided we're going to bring this conversation to the forefront or not. Many of you know who he is, the founder of Cellular Wisdom. It's a body, mind, spirit, healing and empowerment program, but it's actually more than that. With his book, smash book, award-winning book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, the doors now start to open up so that we can look at what are we breaking through, what are we coming from, where the heck are we going, and is fear and anxiety running the show, Cam? Is fear and anxiety running the show? But clearly, today's show is, does your inner child run your life? I will tell you that for me, yes, for a lot of years. Dr. Friedemann, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm always happy to be on the show, and it's definitely a topic that's very dear to my heart. And, I can tell you my inner child is always a little nervous when, there is a radio show coming or any talk or something like this. So there's definitely a part of me that is, like I was taught as a child to have to be the best and have to perform and whatever, that is triggered. And I think that's a classic example of how sometimes we are falling into these little patterns and these emotional ways of responding to certain situations that reminds of, oh my God, this is exactly how I felt when I was, 10 years old. And those things we cannot ignore because they have a message to us, they have a meaning to us, and that's what the show is all about.
Well, part of this is really looking at what is an inner child, what it means. Now, I'm a little older than you, actually, a bit older, actually. But the thing is that we heard a lot about the inner child when you're coming through the 70s, right? There was a lot of dialogue about the inner child. Then the inner child went on sabbatical. And what I mean by that, we stopped talking about it. And now we're bringing that conversation back. And I wanted to talk with you about this, and just kind of get your opinion about, what happened. Did we decide that the inner child was all about, love and peace in the 60s and it didn't make sense to people? Or, did we have to go through some changes in life so that we knew how to bring that inner child conversation to contemporary times, because it's not the 60s anymore. I think not.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, that the things changed since then, also in relationship to how to handle the inner child. It's curious. I mean, this is something that we see in many ways in many disciplines, that something disappears and then, there is a renaissance and comes back. And it's not really clear why it may come back. If it's, just like, certain books that were written, TV shows that came up. But there's certainly more interest now in the inner child. And, what I find has changed is that we are realizing that we need to also be really aware of our own inner child in order to be better parents. And, what the mistakes were that our parents, unconsciously mostly did, we want to learn from. And we want to be in a place where, obviously we are doing it not to our children. And so recognizing that there is something inside of us that is still aching from the childhood, that's still dealing with confusions of that time, that is still living in some kind of a self-protective survival mode, is really important when it comes to thriving and when it comes to being the adult and the parent you want to be for your own children, and of course also for yourself. So I think there is a good chance that we can learn a lot from how we are dealing with the inner child on how we're dealing with life in general.
I want to ask you a question about, moments and times of pain. And let me be specific about that. For example, I have heard you talk about this several times, and I think we're almost ready to do another relationship show because, I don't know about your experience, but this whole idea of the wounded child, that wounded inner child, seems to come up. He or she seems to come up and show up when we're in relationship with other people. It could be a boss. It could be, a loved one. It could be a new relationship. I mean, there are many, many ways that, of course, the inner child can, rise up and all of a sudden, we're feeling that. But relationship seems to be, these romantic relationships seem to be where that inner child just creeps in there and just runs the life.
Well, I mean, certainly relationships are one of the triggers, for many reasons. A relationship can be seen as a danger for that younger self inside, because it may be the source of rejection, abandonment, and hurt. So if the theme of your history was that, then letting anybody get close will always be looked at as a threat, because, opening your heart, trusting someone, there is, of course, a question, what if this is going to happen again? Then there is in relationship also that, desire to have a need met that maybe the inner child didn't get met. There is love, there is comfort, there is the feeling of being taken care of, and all of a sudden we are falling into a certain sense of neediness or dependency, or maybe even expectations that the other person cannot really fulfill. A classic situation is what I hear so many times, someone saying, well, every person I'm with tells me at the beginning I'm this really confident, cool person, and then a month into the relationship, I turn into this little needy worm, and they get totally turned off and confused, and then the relationship ends. And that's where the inner child comes in, where basically now there is a person that, is seen as, the next proximity person that, can replace the parents. And so we are playing out subconsciously certain patterns and roles we have played as children. And that's something where, when we're not aware of course, we are just creating the same story over and over again.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit about how this inner child starts to look and feel and show up. I mean, we talk about it quite a bit. And, as I said, growing up in the 60s and so forth and 70s, there was a lot of conversation about it, a lot of therapy that was done about it, a lot of people really focusing on it. And, Dr. Friedemann, a lot of books that were really written about it. And, so I think that it's hard for us to even recognize what the inner child is. And what I mean by that is, how do I even know if my inner child is running the show? What does she look like? For those of you, the guys out there, what does he look like? And how do I know it's my inner child and it's not me? Well, we're going to talk about this and much more. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, get ready to meet your inner child. And once you meet that inner child, once you meet her or him, do you know what to do? Do you know what to say? How do we have a conversation that's healing, compassionate, and action-oriented? That's why Dr. Friedemann Schaub is in the house. Make sure you check him out, thefearandanxietysolution.com, also cellularwisdom.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Is on my side. Heaven and earth have finally aligned.
Hello, my name is Dr. Friedemann Schaub. Make sure to add positive emotions to your counterbalancing thoughts. I know that feeling positive and compassionate toward yourself can be a huge challenge, especially when you're struggling with anxiety. Therefore, it's helpful to imagine that the main source of your negative self-talk is a younger part of your mind, which is just playing old tapes and repeating outdated protective programs. You will notice how much easier it is to speak in a calm, reassuring, and comforting way when you visualize addressing an inner child. By counterbalancing your negative thoughts with kindness and compassion, you automatically shift your consciousness and attitude from I am powerless to I'm taking charge.
Let the transition begin. Tune in to the hit show, Majestic Insights Radio, Success for Life's Transitions, with host Carrie Keith. Carrie is a gifted intuitive coach, healer, and teacher who will lead you through her empowering techniques of ancient wisdom and awareness so you can live your happiest, healthiest, and most vibrant life. Let Carrie teach you the tools of transformation that will help you experience success for all of life's transitions. To learn more about Carrie, visit www.majesticinsights.com. Are you feeling broken from your relationships? Are you second-guessing yourself about friends, family, and lovers? Tune in to the hit show that's creating a buzz in the love-seeking community. Love Seeker Radio, finding love for your authentic self with renowned love coach Heather Lynn. Tired of dissatisfying relationships? Kiss them goodbye and power up your love seeker energy. Coach Heather Lynn reminds you that you can just be you, the beautiful and perfect you. Visit heatherlynncoaching.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm Tim Darter.
And I'm Steve Kramer.
Join us on Spirit Fire Radio. Discover how to add the mechanics of meditation to your day.
And watch yourself connect in a whole new way. Find the amazing moments in life's routines that often pass us by. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio.
Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. for your weekly guide to practical mindfulness. And to learn more, visit www.spiritfireradio.com.
Are you seeking a more deeply connected and fulfilling life? Do you often find yourself feeling overwhelmed, overworked, or exhausted? Are you ready to embrace a life filled with more love, connection, and joy? Best of the Month list and 5-star rated on Amazon, Conscious Being by author T.J. Woodward will awaken you to your true nature. To learn more about how to get your copy of Conscious Being, visit ConsciousBeingBook.com today.
That's the way it should be. You sprinkle stardust on my pillowcase.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Dr. Friedemann Schaub joining us here today. The Empowered Self series with co-host Dr. Friedemann Schaub. Joining me here today, does your inner child run your life? Well, here's what I want to say. We are having a conversation about about the inner child. What is the inner child? But, Dr. Friedemann, one of the things that I said before was, okay, I'm not sure I even know how to recognize whether it's my inner child or it's me. And I think that's probably, one of the greatest challenges for people. I think sometimes it's more obvious than others, but other times I'm not sure. And I'd love for you to talk about that. Is it me or is it my inner child?
Well, when you say you, who do you mean?
Well, the real me.
And the inner child isn't your real me?
That's the question, right? I mean, because we think our inner child is not us. We think, oh, wait a minute, but maybe it is us. But what form of me is she? Is she the one that stands up for injustice? Or is she the one that feels sad when things are not happening? What is the inner child? Because if I can't recognize her, then the question that becomes, how am I going to know if she's running my life? And actually, Dr. Friedemann, is that such a bad thing?
Well, in many ways, that's another question we're going to definitely get into because it's a very good one. But, what I feel is what we are talking about is the inner child that is creating patterns that are, usually making us feel anxious, insecure, feeling not fitting in, behaviors that we as a child have experienced. Now, if you feel like you had an inner child that was boisterous, or let's say you had a childhood where you were boisterous, happy, everything was magical and wonderful, well, you may find that still at times coming up, when you're on vacation or when you are just playing with your kids. I mean, there may be these moments where you really feel, oh yeah, now I'm really back into that magic of my childhood. But how many of us actually felt that during the childhood there was a lot of insecurity, there was a lot of sense of maybe confusion or not feeling safe, and so we reacted to our environment, to the people around us, to certain, ideas of threats in those patterns of self-protection. One way you can tell that there is an inner child now at work and taking over is when you find yourself to act in certain immature ways and self-limiting ways that you feel like it doesn't really make sense that I'm like this, but I cannot help myself. I'm just doing it. Sometimes it feels even self-defeating. Let's say you're dealing with authority figures and all of a sudden you shrink. You feel very small and you feel like totally tongue-tied and nothing comes out. Or you feel like when you are criticized, you cannot really handle it. You either, get a temper tantrum or you pout and you don't want to talk. Or maybe it's like when you feel whenever there is some kind of a pressure or a deadline, you watch TV or you eat a lot of cookies and you procrastinate just like you did when you had to do your homework in school. Things like this can teach you a lot about yourself, but also help you to trace back where it came from, and that is often the inner child. It's like when you don't really recognize that there is, an adult at work because you're acting, feeling, and thinking in much more childish and immature ways. Now, the problem is when we do this, our first response is not to think about the inner child. Our first response is to slap ourselves, criticize ourselves, tell ourselves we are bad, which doesn't really help, and especially when you think about an inner child, it doesn't help at all because it just makes that disconnect even worse.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about this idea of running the show, if we could, for a minute, because that's really the title of the show today. I mean, it is about the Empowered Self series. Does your inner child run your life? And this is a really good question. I mean, I did make a comment earlier. Of course, it was a Seahawks comment about Cam Chancellor. who has been holding out. And, holding out, what does that mean? He's been attempting to renegotiate his contract. And if you listened or watch some of the feedback back and forth, people commenting on this and commenting on that, one might say, if we look at the surface, right, and we're looking at the surface because we're fans, we'll say, that's an inner child running my life deal. But it may or may not have been. But to us, it might look like that.
Yeah, it could be. But, in this regard, I feel that probably the inner child was much more ready to play with the buddies and, win a game because, basically any kind of sports is basically activating the inner child. That's what we love, to either watch it or play it. Just be out there and, hopefully win and have a good time. And I'm sure that his inner child said, hey, my buddies are struggling. What am I doing here on the couch? I think it was maybe more the adult and maybe more the agent adult who made him sit there and wait for this and scheme it out. So I'm not sure that this was really driven by emotions. See, the inner child is very emotional. And it's very impulsive in many ways, and that holdout wasn't really impulsive. That seemed to me much more calculated than that.
When we look at this, right, and we think to ourselves, okay, wait a minute. Okay, now I'm acknowledging, Dr. Friedemann, that this part exists. And you said, well, wait a minute, our inner child likes to play sports, likes to do things like that. But the question really is now, what actually happens if the inner child runs our life? And, is it all bad? And I think that's really kind of the confusion around this. And it's been for years. My inner child is running my life, but is that such a bad thing, Dr. Friedemann? Is that such a bad thing?
Well, it depends.
When does that inner child go from good to bad?
Well, it depends. So let's say, for example, and that's what we are assuming right now, that when the inner child runs your life and the inner child comes from a pain place, comes from a fear place, comes from a place where it feels rather not good enough about the world. And so it doesn't really know how to interact, or it plays certain roles. For example, I was the achiever because that's what I was told I had to be, but I also was a pleaser and the peacemaker. What that meant for me for a long time, and I'm still falling into these patterns at times, is that I rather try to help others and make sure that even in friendships all their needs are met than actually speaking up for myself and saying, this is what I need. I rather ask questions than actually talking about myself. That was a pattern that, I was basically from my childhood on taking on. Now, you could say, well, that's not so bad. A good listener, a good question asker, what's wrong with that? Well, it's imbalanced. It's not really coming from a place of fullness. It doesn't really come from a place of wholeness. It comes from that need to do something, to get some kind of a security and approval. And when that is happening, when your inner child is running your life from that place, you will always be in a need place. You will always somehow be in a survival place. And that's where we have to, to notice, well, is the inner child still there and makes itself heard and seen and felt because there are certain needs that haven't been met? In the good old days, it was about, well, you have an inner child, you see her, you see him, you give him a hug, all is good. Well, that's not enough. There is so much more complexity now to understanding what the inner child actually is about, its influence, its purpose. It's not about putting the inner child either somehow in the children's room, locking the door and being done with it. And it's also not about making the inner child grow up at light speed so that finally there is quiet in the mind. It's actually about to gain a deeper understanding, not only about the needs of that inner child, but also about the gifts it can share. And I think that's something that has changed in the meantime over the years, to really honor the inner child more as a resource than seeing it just as an unruly nuisance.
One of the things that I love talking with you about is how do we take something that is seen in such a strange way, right? How do we take something that is seen in such a strange way or even in a negative way and come to a different understanding about it? One of the things that happens sometimes is we start to look at our lives and we talk about inner child and we start to feel like we are defective from that point of view. That there's something about us that is just not normal. And isn't that in itself feeding sort of, a pathology of sorts, this idea of how we look at ourselves and talk about ourselves, even if we are talking about an inner child.
I totally agree. I mean, this is not about only the inner child. It's about any kind of emotional challenges, period. It's very quickly I have a flaw, a disorder, I have a weakness, and I need to fix it. Our bandwidth of acceptance is very, very narrow, and every year it seems like it gets smaller and smaller. There is a certain way we think we have to be, a certain standard we have to reach, a certain success level we have to somehow accomplish, and anything else is not acceptable. And that is really something that I feel is creating in itself such an inner feeling of rejection and confusion, and certainly is further damaging the inner child. When we are looking back at, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, I'm sure that, especially in cities, but also rural areas, the childhoods were different and maybe a little bit harder because maybe children didn't have as much. But maybe it was more clearly lined out as, okay, this is you, the child, and this is what's expected from you, and we are the adults. There was not what happens now. The childhood already overlaid with certain expectations on what you need to do, because the moment you are born, you already have to think about your college application. And that moment is already basically putting a lot of pressure on you. And what children are doing these days in regards to having to meet up expectations, what they're living in regards to how much time they're spending doing homework and extracurricular activities, there's really no room for the child to even figure out who he or she is. And I think that's something that has started already at the baby boomers, but it's getting worse and worse. And that will be something where a lot of people are going to deal with an inner child, because after 30 or 40 years of just functioning and never having freedom, there will be a moment of a temper tantrum of an inner child that says, what about play? What about discovery? What about me? And I think we have to just, start now to work with this and not wait until we have our, severe depressions, burnouts, or panic attacks coming.
Yeah, and you know what? More and more and more we're seeing it. I mean, so much so that, what's happening in our mainstream media is all you need to do is turn on your TV, and there is a pill, potion, and lotion for just about anything that's going on with you mentally right now. And, this is really a reflection of a group consciousness. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Dr. Friedemann Schaub is in the house. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the relationship between that inner child and the ego. It's really fascinating, Dr. Friedemann. In the years that I've been doing this, and even before that, the ego has really gotten a bad rap. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say about it. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. It used to be mad love. So take a look what you've done. 'Cause baby, now we got bad blood. Did you have to do this? I was thinking that you could.
Artie Hoffman is the hottest psychic with the warmest heart and the host of the hit show Angels and Answers. A renowned psychic, medium, spiritual life coach, and an entertaining motivational speaker, Artie has helped over 15,000 people with his amazing intuitive gifts, his passion, and his humor. Call 877-ANGEL-02 to schedule a personal reading or to have your own psychic Artie party. That's 877-ANGEL-02. And visit artiehoffman.com and Angels and Answers on Facebook.
Tune in to Lucid Planet Radio with Dr. Kelly Neff. This hit show will illuminate your senses and empower you beyond your daily stressors and hardships. Renowned psychologist and author Dr. Kelly will captivate you with far-reaching topics and amazing guests as you wake to the greatest version of yourself. Learn to tap into your intuitions, think critically about our world, heal emotional and psychological wounds, and follow your passions to live your dreams. The Lucid Planet, welcome home. Visit lucidplanetradio.com for more information.
Transformation Talk Radio is dedicated to the education and awareness of Lyme disease.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Lyme Talk Radio. I'm Dr. Pat, joined here by
Dr. Nusheen Darvish.
Dr. Pat Basili and Dr. Nusheen Darvish will be bringing the most innovative, groundbreaking information, research, treatment innovations, and stories from those it affects every day.
I'm so excited to be talking about this.
We have so much to share.
Dr. Darvish and I are planning to do is connect the dots.
People suffering with all sorts of chronic diseases. It's time. It is time for them to transform.
Tune into Lyme Talk Radio and help keep our mission strong.
For the loyal listeners out there that have been listening to this incredible show on Lyme disease, we are not going to let you down. We're going to come through stronger and enrich the platform for Lyme disease awareness through Lyme Talk Radio. The message will continue, the conversations will become stronger, and the healing epic.
Do you want the freedom to spend more time with your loved ones? Travel the world? Live spontaneously? Get ready, because the Chip Justice Show is here. Hosts Dr. Pat Basili and Chip Justice can help you build meaningful success while embracing life. Living a life you love is the end game in this new, inspirational, and empowering show. Positive changes for life you'll love. Tune in every month on TransformationTalkRadio.com and visit PositiveChangeInstitute.co for more information.
Hi, I'm Tim Darter.
And I'm Steve Kramer.
Join us on Spirit Fire Radio. Discover how to add the mechanics of meditation to your day.
And watch yourself connect in a whole new way. Find the amazing moments in life's routines that often pass us by. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio.
Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. for your weekly guide to practical mindfulness. And to learn more, visit www.spiritfireradio.com.
Have to ruin what was shiny, now it's all rusted. Did you have to hit me where I'm weak? Baby, I couldn't breathe and rub it in so deep. Salt in the wind like you're laughing right at me. Oh, it's so sad to think about the good times, you and I. 'Cause baby, now we got bad.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It's so great to have all of you here, but most importantly, it's great to have Dr. Friedemann Schaub joining me here today. Before we kind of go on and talk about the idea of the inner child and the ego, can we take a minute and just make sure folks know, first of all, how they can get a copy of the Fear and Anxiety Solution, also what a free phone consultation with you is about, and then how they can get a hold of you directly.
Well, the book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, that actually also contains quite a few chapters on the inner child and how to connect and how to help that part of you to release fear and outgrow these survival patterns, can be purchased either on the website, thefearandanxietysolution.com, or Amazon, or any kind of major bookstore and outlet. If you are interested in working on this individually in breakthrough sessions that I'm offering, you can schedule a free phone consultation or a Skype consultation. I'm literally working with people all over the world via Skype or the phone. And the simplest way to do this is just to email my assistant at info@thefearandanxietysolution.com. and she will set you up and give you more information on what that all entails.
Oh, it's great. And also, as we're looking at, some of the things that you're putting together, you also do webinars, you do a number of different things. So there are a lot of different ways for people to work with you. Right, Dr. Friedemann?
Yes. And there will be also very soon, in probably just 10 days, a brand new website coming out. The fearandanxietysolution.com had a major facelift, and so check it out. Should be up at October 1st.
Excellent. Well, we're going to check it out. And, certainly we're looking forward to you now, too, stepping forward and also doing something a bit different. Life is changing. Things are changing. And, adapting is really an interesting word. And so here we are in a conversation about the inner child, right? And, before the break, I said, well, Dr. Friedemann, the inner child, okay, ego, both of these phrases, both of these ideas about ourselves have really taken a bad rap in decades and decades and decades. And so, okay, what's the difference between the inner child and the ego?
Personally, I believe that the ego and the inner child are very, very closely related and in many ways one and the same, especially when we are talking about the ego that may drive us to get recognition, that wants to somehow, get people to like you, the ego that says, what's in it for me? I want, more of that. I mean, what is that other than a part inside of us that just always felt maybe, not nurtured enough or not really acknowledged enough or pushed aside? The ego is a wounded child. In so many ways, it's acting from that place. And the worst you can do with a wounded child is to demonize it and basically telling it, you either go away or you shut up. You're certainly not, right. We should ignore the ego. We should outgrow the ego. It's a terrible incongruency we are creating inside of us. And ultimately, maybe it's possible at some point to really transcend the ego, but what you left behind is then all the gifts and all the beautiful resources of the inner child, because that is also then somewhere behind you. And I don't want to leave my child behind. I want to certainly try to integrate it and give it what it needs, but give it what it needs in ways that it actually learns to trust and not always feel like it needs to battle with the adult. And that's what we are creating when we are labeling these patterns that maybe be self-defeating at times. I agree with that. But these patterns are not inherently bad or, ego-driven flaws. They are simply messages from deep inside of our subconscious that something still needs our attention.
I don't know about you, but I will tell you that sometimes I can't see the forest for the trees, meaning that I've always looked to go get some help, especially when I am so knee-deep and stuck in whatever that thing is. And you know this a little bit, Dr. Friedemann. I mean, the whole crust-busting idea that started, close to... what was it, close to 13, 14 years ago, which became the radio show early on, was because I was so stuck. And I saw myself sitting on a couch. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I am so crusted over, I can't even move. And so I would love for you to talk about this, because most of the time for me, and I don't think I'm different, I have not been able to get out of my own way around my inner child and my ego by myself.
Well, I think that can be a problem. And the problem has to do, that nobody really teaches us, how to deal with the inner child. And especially if we didn't really have great role models of parents. Well, how do you know how to deal with a child? This is something that can be hard. What surprises me on that line is that often people that did have real hard times with their parents and that do have a very active and challenged inner child can still be amazing parents because they do everything just the opposite. They just do really everything that they know had hurt them and try to avoid that from happening to their own children. So the problem is just, how can we do this for ourselves? And I think that's where people often are stumped, that they feel like, well, I can say all the right things to my own children. I can be all loving and kind and compassionate to them. But when it comes to myself, I just treat me exactly like my father and my mother were treating me. And that's where having a third person in play can be very helpful, just someone who can guide you through that maze of your past and your mind, and help you to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your inner child, and also teach you ways how to communicate with this child. But see, one thing that I can tell you, what I find is, what we all can do right away is to just pull out a picture from your old photo albums and really look at the child that you feel right now is the most, on the surface. You may remember yourself as an awkward teenager who never wanted to talk, with boys or girls and always felt a little bit different. Or you may remember yourself as that latchkey kid that already at the age of 8 had to come home and basically entertain itself and, make itself a little bit something to eat because, the parents were at work. And you remember that loneliness and that feeling of, being afraid that, every sound in the room may have meant, there is a burglar in the house. You may remember that your feelings that you have now frequently come to the surface, maybe the feeling of, not being lovable, not fitting in, not being safe, can be traced back to those times. And when you look at this, and this is often what my clients are doing, they look at old pictures and they can see in the eyes of the child in those pictures the pain or the fear or the insecurity or how hard they try to smile, but how inside is a deep sadness. They can see it in those pictures, and in that moment they can actually feel a greater sense of compassion than we're just imagining the inner child as some kind of a concept that we cannot really that much relate to. So having this visual can really open a door and make you actually feel like more inclined to say, I feel like there is still something inside of me that feels exactly that way. And if that little girl or that little boy is in my heart, I want to make sure that I listen and then compassionately give that part of me what it needs. Because that compassion and that love is the ultimate healing tool that the inner child requires from us.
Well, and when we come back from break, let's talk about this, because when we talk about healing, there must be a wound. And part of what you just talked about is being able to connect with that part. What is it about, some of our woundedness that does require probing, understanding, or even getting underneath our subconscious? That's what Dr. Friedemann Schaub does, and does so well. When we come back, we're going to talk about what are some of the things in life that, show up. Maybe things that keep us addicted. Maybe things that prevent us from living the life we want. Maybe things that prevent us from getting the jobs we want. How about having the love of our lives? Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Sleep. I got the sheets on the floor, nothing on me, and I can't take it no more. It's 100 degrees. I got 1 foot out the door.
Sky Siegel co-hosts one of today's most popular psychic shows, Angels and Answers, with Artie Hoffman, as she communicates healing messages from the spirit world. These messages can be astounding, enlightening, and life-changing. Born with the God-given talent of inner guidance and the amazing ability to heal, Sky has healed thousands of people. Schedule a reading with Sky now. Call 908-500-1474 and visit skyofangels.com.
How would you like increased health and vitality? How would you like to avoid the onset of disease as well as slow the aging process? This is all possible through a simple, safe, and natural process. Every day we are either moving toward wellness or away from wellness.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. I'd like to be your partner in achieving optimal health. Contact me now at maryjanemack.com or call 425-392-0659. Visit maryjanemack.com.
Tune in to Prescience Life Radio with host Mia Simone. Mia is devoted to sharing her extensive knowledge on the invisible worlds of energy. Join Mia and discover the science of intuition and connect with your greatest gift. Start living in your potential today and every day by opening up to the power of inner knowledge. To learn more about Mia, visit presciencelife.com.
Tune in to The Jen Royster Show, intuitive guidance to inspire your life. Each Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This amazing show is an inspirational hour that will take you on an epic metaphysical journey to discover the spiritual approach to life's greatest challenges. Dr. Jen is an internationally known intuitive counselor, spiritual teacher, and energy healer. Call in for intuitive readings and visit JenRoyster.com for more information.
Are you feeling broken from your relationships? Are you second-guessing yourself about friends, family, and lovers? Tune into the hit show that's creating a buzz in the love-seeking community, Love Seeker Radio, finding love for your authentic self with renowned love coach Heather Lynn. Tired of dissatisfying relationships? Kiss them goodbye and power up your love seeker energy. Coach Heather Lynn reminds you that you can just be you, the beautiful and perfect you. Visit heatherlynncoaching.com to learn more.
Dr. Linda Salvin, Metaphysical Master, now bringing insight and metaphysical abundance to your living room with her spirit-filled candle line, Wicks of Wisdom. Dr. Linda's unique formulations of pure and powerful herbs, oils, and essences can assist you in love, luck, finances, health, and more. Wait till you experience the power of Wicks of Wisdom. Find out how these amazing candles can help you. See them now and order yours at lindasalvin.com or call 888-509-1077.
And if you want me, girl, you got me. There's nothing I know I wouldn't do just to get up next to you. Girl, you the one I want to.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Dr. Friedemann Schaub, the Fear and Anxiety Solution.com is the website. I know we got a lot to cover in this segment, and I just, I just want to turn this over to you so that folks can get some help about, what is it about the inner child, the woundedness that we can heal, and how do we do it?
I think, when we just have the awareness of, first of all, the patterns we just, talked about, the patterns that basically display a certain kind of immature anxiety, insecurity, not lovability, and so on inside of us. And we are actually stepping away from it for a moment and not seeing this as our identity or our truth, but seeing it simply as, okay, there is a part of me that is still somehow living in the past, a part of me that still sees me as this small, helpless child that basically doesn't have the tools or doesn't have the foundation to really move through this life. When we realize there is a part of us that just needs to be reconnected with, then there is already just a relief happening, because you don't feel like you're fighting yourself. You're realizing it's about a healing, it's about a growing, it's about a re-educating. Now, as you are wanting to connect more deeply to the inner child, and I said just the part with, looking at a picture, listen also to your thoughts. Be aware of that there are thoughts coming up that at times may be sounding like the thoughts of a child. Is it okay? What if they don't like me? What if nobody comes? Things like that just are, feeling from a place of great vulnerability. And sometimes you may hear also voices that sound like your, angry father or the critical mother inside of you, a voice that, feels judgmental or beating you down. And then you also know, well, that's just the echo of that, what happened to the inner child. And the inner child is replaying the tape to make sure that you are on your toes, that this doesn't happen to you again, that you're watchful. So when we see all those things, and we also know, okay, now there is actually a communication, and we need to answer. We need to basically clarify the confusion. We need to counterbalance the negative thoughts, but we need to do this from the heart. We cannot just do this in the head. We cannot just go into an inner debating club. And so just starting an inner communication, imagining that you're sitting somewhere with your child and you're actually speaking and responding to concerns. Negative thoughts don't have to be statements. They can just be questions of, is it okay? And you're answering them. All of those things are very helpful. But what is important is your role as the adult, and that's often overlooked. As the adult, you need to be trustworthy. If you are acting in untrustworthy ways, where you're saying, oh yeah, I'm going to talk to the inner child every day, and tomorrow you forget about it. If you're saying, you're absolutely right, I don't binge drink and drive this weekend again because that scares my inner child, and you do it again. Right. If you're saying, oh no, I don't go out and pick up a man in a bar, but you do it again, then you're acting in ways that the inner child doesn't have any trust, and you're creating a bigger gap between yourself and that vulnerable part. Or if you're saying, oh, I'm going to be really positive to myself, and I'm going to be really upbeat and appreciate myself, and the next morning you look in the mirror and you say, I hate my belly, I hate how I look, I'm so old. It's again, all this anger and all this self-hatred is creating not a relationship of trust, not a relationship of love, but it's creating again a fear and a disconnect from the inner child, because you have to realize the inner child is your vulnerable self. It's a part of you that takes everything personally. So how you act as an adult is also influencing the inner child, and whether it feels safe, it can trust you, it feels close to you, which then eventually will make it actually just be more at ease and more quiet, or whether it feels like uncomfortable within you and just almost wants to leave you because you're not really a safe person to be with. So that's an important aspect to look at as well.
Yeah, because that is true. I mean, we start to act in the outer world in ways that our inner child absolutely believes that, oh my gosh, we are going to be in trouble now. I mean, and by just listing some of those things, it's really, really important to get a level of awareness. What would you say to folks, and I know we got a couple of minutes here, what would you say to folks to help them become more aware of, when our inner child is trying to get our attention?
Well, I think emotions are very important here. Yeah. And, we just mentioned how, our sometimes self-destructive behavior is rattling up the fear and the survival mode of the inner child. And this very much happens when people have been reckless with themselves, and all of a sudden they are waking up with a panic attack, or they are feeling this enormous sense of guilt and depression after doing something that they know wasn't really good for them. That is one way of that inner child to, basically say, hey, stop, this doesn't feel safe. Now, anything that you feel is coming from a, self-protective mode is probably coming from the inner child. And I'm talking about the self-protective modes that you already have experienced from your childhood. So when you're feeling like, oh, I'm going into protecting myself by being very vigilant, or I'm going and protecting myself by just staying in the background and not interacting with anyone, or I'm going into self-protective mode by being really intense and needing to be the best in the office and needing to make sure that, my colleagues are not beating me. All of those, intense feelings and drives that seem kind of out of place and seem like almost draining your energy, they do come from the inner child, and you can be aware of it. Okay, rather than reacting to these emotions and just doing the same thing I already did when I was, young, I need to stop myself. I need to go inside. I need to get an adult perspective on that and say, no, this is not really necessary. These people are safe. These colleagues are my friends. It's not a competition. Let's just create a new set of perspectives and values on that, but not just in the head, but through communicating with his inner child. And this can take sometimes, a few months to do this. You cannot just expect the child to be like a light switch that you can turn off and all is good. No, you have to really see this as a re-educating and also reintroducing process, reintroducing to a world that is different, a world that is not as, scary and overwhelming that it was maybe when you were little. You are an adult. You have learned a lot. You have a whole, way of moving through life, and the inner child needs to catch up with that. But you need to introduce yourself as such and really live accordingly.
Thank you so much. Dr. Friedemann Schaub, everybody. Thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on. Please go ahead and get a hold of him for your free consultation. Also go to the fearandanxietysolution.com. And remember, live life full out. We'll see you next time.
Tried to swim against